I used to have a real estate business in San Francisco with my husband, Chris. And we had a really robust business and it was awesome, but it was just the two of us. And so my to-do list got really insane. And I remember just writing this list out one day and looking at this page and thinking, I don't know how I'm gonna get it all done because there's not enough time. And knowing that chances were, as my day went on, that list would grow. It was like this sinking feeling in my stomach. I was like, oh my God, like this is what it is now. And I don't know what it's gonna be like at lunchtime, but it's probably gonna be more than this. And I just remember feeling like it's just not physically possible. Like I might as well just like give up right now because I just can't handle it. It's just like too overwhelming. And I felt like that a lot, where I was just like, I just can't. So I just wouldn't want to do anything. I kind of would go into a bit of paralysis because I was just like, this is just not even possible. And then the to-do list would grow and then grow and grow. And then I would just like sit there and sort of this feeling of like, oh my God, I'm being overwhelmed by this crushing wall of to-do. So I just felt like this scarcity of time all the time. Like I was always chasing time. There's never enough time to do what I needed to do. And the crazy thing was, it didn't matter how much I did. I was always having more to do. Okay, so doing more didn't actually relieve it. I just felt like this hamster on a wheel, like all the time. So when I found frequency work, I started to release my distortion patterns with regards to scarcity of time, because this was such a huge problem for me. And what happened was something amazing that I really didn't expect. Instead of focusing on the to-do list and being really attached to when they got done, I moved into a state of neutrality with it, meaning somehow my grip, I've got to get it all done, released. And I was able to move into this space where I was more neutral with regards to time. When do things get done? And so because I was in a state of more neutrality and I was able to surrender more into flow, all of a sudden, now I had motivation and momentum because I wasn't being overwhelmed by this massive wall of crap that I had to do. All of a sudden it was like, okay, I have a little bit more spaciousness here. I can have this sense of, okay, this is actually the priority. This is what's important. Not all 25 things on my to-do list, this thing. I'm just gonna begin with this thing and see where it leads me. But because I had that spaciousness that came with neutrality, all of a sudden, it was one thing that I can manage that took me to the next thing rather than this overwhelm. So what is neutrality? Neutrality is a state of being, and it's talked about a lot in different traditions, and people think that it means that you're emotionally flat, actually, or non-feeling. But that's not what I mean by neutrality. Neutrality is a state of beingness where you are at a state of vibration where you truly are okay with any outcome. And therefore, you're not attached to a particular outcome. So it has to do with attachment. So neutrality has to do with being in a state of increasing detachment from outcome, not to life, but just to a specific outcome. So you're okay with all outcomes. And because you're okay with all outcomes, you're more in flow and you are more open to opportunity and to seeing where things will go because you're not attached to something in particular happening. So to me, that's neutrality. We care about being neutral, or it is something that we move towards because in order to be in this neutral state of being, you have to be more detached from your mind. So many of us think that we are our thoughts, we are our emotions because they're so strong for us. They're really, really loud and they're often fast and they're repetitive. And so we can start to think, okay, this is who I am. When you come into a state of beingness that is, like I call the neutral state, you're much more detached from those thoughts, meaning you can observe them. You don't think they're you. You can see yourself having the thoughts. You can see yourself having the emotions. So it's not like you get sucked into it in the same way. So that's one aspect of neutrality. It gives you an ability to observe or to notice your own thoughts, to notice the patterns of the thoughts that you're having, which enables you to release your distortion or to release the pattern more easily because you're aware of them in the first place. So it allows you to observe yourself from a different level. It also allows you, like I said, to be more detached from any particular outcome. So a lot of people think, well, why would I want that? Because I kind of want what I want. Like I want the new car. I want the partner who's going to make me spectacularly happy. I want the $1 million, whatever it is. Like I want what I want. Why would I want to be neutral? Because when you start to fixate or attach to these things that you think you want, what happens is you close down the possibility of other things coming in for you. So let's just take the example of like, I want $1 million. Well, if you focus on the $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, and that's all you're focused on, first of all, you're emphasizing or amplifying the fact that you don't have it. And secondly, you're locking out the possibility of getting $5 million because all you're focused on is the $1 million. So my point is, when you become more neutral and you're not attached to that thing that you think you want, more possibility comes in for you that you don't even conceive of, because you're not fixated on that thing. And also what's awesome about neutrality is we tend to have this thing when we want something that it's gotta show up for us in this particular way. It's gotta look like this. How I'm gonna get there is this way. So we're very attached to even how it shows up for us. But as you become more and more neutral, you loosen what it is that you want because you're not as attached. So more possibility can come in, and how it comes in can be more magical because it's not you trying to force a certain particular outcome. It's showing up for you in this way that's nonlinear and probably in a way that you couldn't have imagined. So when you're more neutral, your manifestation becomes faster, synchronicities come in, you experience more magic, you experience more flow and more freedom because you're not so pinned in by your attachment to what you think you want and to your thoughts and emotions. So it gives you so much more freedom. Neutrality totally helps you in relationships too, because you're not so attached to whether or not someone's giving you love. Now, it sounds kind of weird because you're like, of course, I'm a human. Don't I want to receive love? But the thing is, when you start to become more and more neutral, you start to feel more complete. Those two things are sort of intertwined together. And because you feel more whole and complete in yourself, you don't need someone to give you love to feel worthy, to feel complete, to feel loved. You feel that for yourself. So you get to receive love and enjoy it, but you don't need it in the same way. And so that feeling of wholeness is part of that neutrality. They're intertwined. And so when you're in the state of neutrality or beingness, and it's not just a single fixed point, by the way. Neutrality is a spectrum, like many things. So you start becoming more neutral and you start to move into greater and greater levels of neutrality. In some areas of your life, you have more charge with it, more distortion. So you're at a certain level of neutrality there and higher levels of neutrality somewhere else. It kind of just depends on who you are. But because you're in this state where you're not needing someone to be a certain way for you, you can be in the space where you're neutral and they can have their experience because you don't need something from them, and you're also not triggered by them in any particular way because they're having their experience, but you recognize that's not your experience, it's their experience. So you can stay in this space of neutrality and recognize and be in this space of observing yourself and them and not getting caught in their emotion and knowing your own vibrational resonance, your own emotional state, and keeping those two things distinct. Neutrality can make you a lot more attractive, not just to people, but to like better possibility and opportunity. Because for people, when you're in this neutral state, you're in more of a state of flow, like I mentioned before. And when you're in this state of flow, more magic and synchronicity and things happen for you because you're not attached to one thing happening. You're open. And so as a result, People, when they're around you, want to be with you because you are in that state of open possibility, of that flow, and they get to entrain to that. So they start to feel that freedom. And it's really exciting to be with someone like that because you're like, wow, anything's possible. And it feels really good to people as opposed to being locked into like, this is really what I want, this is what I don't have, and I wish I had that. It doesn't feel very good. So when you're with somebody who's in that space of neutrality, it presents that opportunity for more accessibility to more opportunity and like just freedom. And I think the other thing too is that it's a gift I've noticed when people are in a neutral state because people can be who they truly are. Because in that neutral state, there's no judgment. You just are present in that moment with that person. And it's such a rare thing to be with someone who's just present with you. They're not judging you. They're not trying to make you better. They're not trying to get to somewhere else or moving to their next appointment at a certain time. They're just with you. And when you can do that for someone, it's really a lovely, amazing thing because it's so rare. And they can just be themselves, have their emotion, process what they need to. It's not impacting you because you're holding your own resonance. You're holding your own space. But you're being really present with them. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch because people in these moments when they're being witnessed can really see themselves. It's a really odd thing. It like gives them a sort of clarity with themselves and they notice things about themselves that they don't usually because they're in a place that's safe and where you're really present with them. So it's really attractive for people. And for opportunity, like I said, it's like because you have a certain type of momentum when you're in this space of beingness, in this space of neutrality. It requires it because you have to be of a certain resonance to get there. You can't think your way to neutrality. A lot of people try with their minds to be like, okay, nothing affects me, therefore I'm neutral. I'm like, it's not a mind game. It's not I'm trying not to have emotion. It's not about that. You can be neutral and have an emotion, meaning you can be non-attached to the emotion and still have the emotion. People confuse those two things all the time. But when you're in the space where you have this kind of higher resonance, because you're in that state of neutrality and because you're in that state of surrender from strength, what can happen then is you notice more opportunity. You're even aware that it exists. Whereas before, if you're really in the state of attachment, you're not even aware of the opportunity because you're so focused to what you're attached to. So it can make you attractive for people and opportunity. To become neutral isn't a trick of the mind. And it's not trying to manage your emotion. The way to get there is you have to release the distortions that keep you attached to whatever you're attached to. So a distortion pattern is a block that you have, like possibly an unconscious one, possibly conscious, where you keep getting stuck, right? You don't know how to get through it because it exists at the frequency level. And when you have these blocks, they keep you spinning in this attachment and it can keep you stuck in a certain place. So you have to release those distortion patterns in order to release the attachment, because you can really want to release an attachment. You can really want to release fear. You can really want to release anxiety. But unless you release the distortion pattern at frequency level, you can't be free of it. So when you release those distortion patterns, you start to move into more and more neutrality because you don't have the heaviness of them keeping you locked in that same pattern of habituation, of thought, and emotion. So if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button. And if you know somebody who could use this information, please share it with them.